All right, folks, we are here for another Quantum Kirk. We have a special guest. This is our second guest, Danny, that we've ever had on the episode, and kind of hit me with the new producer search coming to an end in a couple weeks. Decided to reach out to the 4 or 5 candidates. I don't know how many there are now, still official, and see if each one would want to produce a Quantum Kirk with us. And talk about their favorite episode or an episode that they really like to re-listen to. So the first guest that we have, Danny, out of this is the great Michael Montante, who is producing this episode. Okay, so John from Scranton is our normal producer, so we're not going to have him on to do one of those, even though he's a candidate, because he produces this all the time. So Mike is taking over producing this episode. In the episode that he picked, Danny, and what's the name of it, if you don't mind kicking it off?
Be 3 Strikes.
3 Strikes. So this is an episode that it is still pre-Cullinane, kind of. Mike's right on the edge, right, Danny, of our timeline. Yeah. So this is produced by Matt Carano. Dave has been hired, but he has not taken over yet. But it does kind of tie into a producer search. So I kind of liked it, Mike, because we actually hear them talking about Jerry trying to replace Dave on this episode quite a bit. So I found that kind of funny. But Mike, what made you want to pick this episode? What made you kind of want to get into it?
Honestly, I don't re-listen to episodes of anything, so it's a little weak spot for me on this.
You made that clear.
Yes, so I flung back to 2021, and I was just looking at titles, and for whatever reason, I clicked on 3 Strikes. I'm not sure why, and I saw in the description that Carano was filling in. There was some mystery to another producer role, so it just kind of tied into what's been going on the last month or so here. And I actually have some of the audio of the Jerry producer search if you guys want to get to it.
Mikey drops.
Mikey drops here. All right.
It's going to take a second. We're doing it very professionally, but give me. All right, let's go.
Anyway, before we get to that, were you observing Jerry Callahan's show yesterday?
I was not.
You were not. Oh, somebody else was.
Someone was.
Was it Craig?
No.
Ooh,
so during the show, during my show yesterday, Craig gets a text. It was great having you in today. Oh, really? And Craig, he was like, "This is Craig. I was not in today." And he's like, sorry about that.
Hey, sorry, buddy.
You're not on the list."
It's the old Tim Neverett. I thought you were the milk guy or the bread guy. Was that what it was? I forget. I'm sure I've told that story.
So it was not Craig either. I don't know who it was.
Wow, a mystery for the job. Well, I mean, Matt has said he's not interested in the job.
I did not.
Too big. So many words.
Too big for it.
I never.
Have you had correspondence with Jerry since then?
Yeah, we talked on Monday.
How'd that go?
Very good.
What do you think?
I mean, I just think there's restrictions on both sides. So I don't know if
what are the restrictions on his side?
He doesn't want to admit that
it's a part-time job. It's there's it's proximity to if he's going to stay around Boston. Obviously he is. I think he bought a house there. So
yeah, he has a place. Yeah, right in basically right in the city. Yeah.
So I guess it's just whether or not he wants to do it in a studio, and that might be difficult for me proximity wise. If it's a part-time job, it's just all that. It's all the extra stuff. I mean,
sure, I understand that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well.
So it's funny, Mike. So on this show, this happens a lot where I say it almost every episode, right? Danny, time is a flat circle in the KMS world where you're hearing the same sort of names, same sort of concepts going on. So it's so funny how Kirk has done his producer search and how Jerry did his producer search, which we ended up knowing that Matt ended up getting that job, right? But Craig was mentioned there as well.
Well, not only that, the whole reason this producer search for Jerry had to go on was because his producer, Cullinane, was leaving to go to Kirk.
Yeah. So it's funny how it's just like the switching around. So Danny, what did that jump out at you? I want you. By the way, Danny's sick. This is the day before we were supposed to be going into Kirk's show. So if you're watching this, you'll probably see me on Kirk tomorrow unless he cancels, because Danny won't be able to go in. Correct, Danny?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. This is my Jordan flu game here. Had to join the boys, but I know I'm getting hammered for even testing for COVID. But we got
you do sound like shit.
You sound like shit. I don't think Kirk would. I think it's a good. Kirk wouldn't want you in there.
Well, that was one of my, and I wasn't about to get into it with the Twitter comments. I think I put one little comment out there. Yeah. The bottom line is Kirk would not want me in studio like this, and so I wanted to make sure I gave Mikey enough of a heads up to potentially find a replacement. Sounds like Dave's replacing both of us, which he's very capable of doing. And I think it's going to be a great show. I'm going to get absolutely destroyed on multiple fronts tomorrow. So, I'm already sick and I'm probably just going to be dead after tomorrow. By the way, you guys are missing a big opportunity if you don't show up with a fake gravestone and put it on my chair. And, R.I.P.
Oh my God.
Danny.
If John, edit that out, please. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm not doing that, Danny.
You're going to edit it out because you want to do it and not know that I gave you the idea. I get it. Yeah. No, that's fine. You don't have to give me credit for it. So anyway, it'll be fun. But I couldn't totally bail because I've bailed on enough Quantum Kirks. I had to at least come through when I can work remotely. So it's a pleasure to be here. And Mike, great to have you on. This was a great idea by Daver to have the producer candidates come in and hang out and test their mettle on a large show like Quantum Kirk. So yeah, the producer part of it, yeah, we do keep coming back to this, Daver, but it's so true. It's more incestuous than that Southern family they keep showing on that pops up on every Facebook news feed these days. When he names off the names going to fucking Milton's, it's the same bunch of assholes that have been doing this since day one, and I love it. It's one of my favorite.
It's just
parts
they're switching chairs a little bit though. There's just switching around a little.
It's musical chairs, absolutely, between the two shows. So you're right. So you have Cullinane has moved off of Jerry's show, and right now everyone's kind of in purgatory at the moment because you got Carano in there. Carano goes over to Jerry's show till I think about January of 22. And then Ironhead ends up over there. Good to see Craig over there. And then, of course, Montante's filled in over on Jerry's show as well. And he does the weekly football spot, which is one of my favorite parts. If you guys don't listen to Jerry's show, I'm not telling you to go listen to it for the show. But, Mike, when you come on and do the little gambling thing with Craig and you guys go back and forth, that's actually really entertaining because there's some real back and forth there, which there needs to be more of that on that show in general. Once again, I digress. The question is, who is that mystery producer? Was it the Marine guy who didn't even know how to produce that Cullinane recommended? Is that who it was?
I don't know. That's my big question. That's what I got. So for the people,
they never address it. They never address it. The clip keeps going on, and they say that like Craig said that he felt like he had pretty much no shot to get the job, and which at that time he didn't because they went to Carano, and then he ended up getting it. But yeah, I think it had to be. What the hell is his name? From Rhode Island. He lives in Florida now. The former Marine who could barely, turn on a computer.
But was it Matt the Marine or is that a different guy?
No, I know the guy's name. He's been on Montante. He's actually a super nice guy.
He seemed nice. He knew nothing. The name's just escaping me.
Yeah, he literally knew.
But that was nothing. The best part. That was the Jerry version of.
And wasn't Cullinane the one who actually recommended to Jerry? Yeah,
it wasn't just like a quick one. It was like a strong recommendation. Like this is your guy.
Cullinane's like, this guy can do it, no problem. I think he did one show together. Cullinane takes off, and this guy doesn't even know how to turn on a microphone. And Jerry's like, "What the fuck?" He's going crazy. He was so bad. He was a very nice guy, but he just did not know how to. He didn't know how to produce at all.
So I have a question about this. So like re-listening to this, right, and hearing Matt on the show, and how much Matt wanted the job when Steve left, and Kirk wasn't interested. Like, it's so funny to see where Kirk has gone in the last 2 years, where now he's accepting anyone as a candidate, anyone like that can possibly turn on a computer. You could hit Kirk up and probably go in studio and give it a shot, right? And then he wasn't even interested in like a Carano or a regular Minifan. He wanted like a professional, so to speak, a professional producer. And to hear the difference, if you're Matt Carano now, aren't you like, fuck me for leaving the world a little bit right now? Like watching these guys do this.
Well, he could have had
I think Matt would have had a real shot. I think Matt would have a real shot right now.
But he had that fuck me moment, but then he had plenty of opportunities to come back in, and he said no.
Yeah,
pretty adamantly no. Yeah, so I think he had his chance.
He's out, and and at that time, when you're listening to the show, it kind of seems like maybe it was just that day, and if you listen to a few more, this would be a wrong opinion. But it kind of seemed like this is before Clemmer kind of found his groove. Kind of seemed like he was the more important part in the KMS world of that duo.
Nailed it.
For quite a while. For quite a while. It's easy to forget that. And I think it's interesting to hear, how playful Carano is on this episode. He's kind of dropping some jokes. There's a lot of movie talk. In a lot of back and forth with Kirk and even a little bit with Mike. I mean, he's in a good mood. He's happy. He's playful. He's technically competent. Yeah. I mean, I think if he came back, but now there's obviously a lot of history since then. So, I think if he had come back, say a month earlier when Kirk called him to come on the Plymouth and do a video, he could have gotten back in the good graces and he'd probably be right there next to the rest of you guys. But, it's just one less person for Mikey to battle and Andrew.
Yeah, I noticed like when they're doing like the technical stuff, I was really blown away. Like he had a fourth mic, but it worked for like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
It's shit out on Justin. It's shit out on Justin.
I actually made a note. That was one of my favorite parts.
I have a note. I have a note there too. Go ahead, Danny.
Off mic Justin it was actually a pretty funny bit. Because
So
Kirk would just, hey, Justin, what do you think? And you hear like, rah, 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 shut the fuck up. I don't want to hear from you, Justin. It's like, I loved it every time.
And guys, isn't that great? Isn't that what happened with Cullinane last week? Where Dave, where they'd call him down the hall and Cullinane would come in and he'd be off mic. So like someone even said it, they like it reminded them of when Justin was in studio off mic. So it's kind of funny that happened twice. That bit was great, Danny. That made me laugh quite a bit. Justin coming in, and when he had him do the Star Wars, when he had him reenact like the Star Wars moment, that made me laugh too. Yeah. So let's get into Justin. Justin's a big part of this show. This is right before Madawaska 2. Okay, so they're getting ready to go to Madawaska 2. They battle Dan Daigle. I'm sure Mike will get into that in a little bit, but I want to talk Justin first. So they talk about the caterer. Did that jump out to you guys at all? That made me laugh because that was the caterer that Ben went to fucking 18-hour round trip to Saco, which cost Kirk $30,000. So it's funny because like that's where Justin got the caterer was from Madawaska 2. Am I correct in that, Danny and Mike?
I believe so, yeah, because it made sense for this caterer to go to Madawaska, right? Because they're in Madawaska.
He's in Madawaska, yeah.
But for them to go to Saco makes no fucking sense. So yes, this planted the seed for that entire 39K or whatever, 29K, whatever, just this. It all started here, right? You see
all started here.
These little seeds of ridiculousness.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of Dan, how are you going to transition into Daigle? Because I was looking for that sound. Either you guys picked that out.
Well, it sounds like we just did, Mikey. Great segue.
Well, I'm looking for the clip because you guys didn't send it to me, but I know where it is, so I can splice it in here.
I thought I sent you one. I know my timestamps were all over the place.
You have Fran. You're a big fan of his wife, who calls in later.
Which is just ridiculous.
We'll splice it.
I sent you the timestamp for the apology. I thought that was actually probably the best part because then we can dig into
the whole reason of the episode, right? I believe. 3 strikes is when he's apologizing for resigning.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
Wait a second. No, the three strikes is the third strike is Big Rick.
It's 3 strikes against Madawaska, I think is why they named it that, Mike, because Kirk is mad at the town of Madawaska in general.
Right. So strike 1 is the street sign. Strike 2 is the hit piece. Strike 2 fouled off is the 96.1
radio station
with fucking Richard, what's his name, and then Big Rick is actual strike 3. The Dan Daigle's actually after that.
Okay, because I was his Daigle during that episode. They go back and forth to it a few times. He's just putting on an absolute masterclass of weird small town politicians who take themselves way too seriously.
Yeah. It was amazing.
It was, and so let's actually pull up that clip right now.
We'll come back to Article 9 because there are other items under that article, so I'm going to keep that as an article to discuss here once we get down the bottom.
Discuss your
Article 3 to consider a letter of resignation from a board selectman.
This was the third item.
Do we have a motion?
Dan raised his hand. Put it down.
I'd like to come back, please.
The discussion will come after the motion, yeah? So I need a motion.
Well, I believe he wants to rescind that.
I understand.
Just pretend it never happened.
This is a woman he told off, right?
Yes. Well, that's the only woman that was.
So it's a little long-winded. Do you guys want to keep going, or do you just want to chime in on that?
No, that's good.
But I think
chime in on that.
Mike, the stamp I sent you is actually after this because even Carano's like, well, that's kind of a long setup. And then Carano goes right to the apology right after this, I think.
Okay. So you want to keep playing?
Yeah, 30. Yeah, keep playing because 30. I have 3650.
Yeah, no, there was a bunch of Daigles. Daigles character.
That stuff's kind of funny, but it is a little longer for to play all that.
It's no, because this guy definitely does not get to the point. I'll tell you that. Definitely not a fan of that. But let's get back to it.
He'd fit right in. We should have him on.
Like responding to it.
I think we have to do the motion in positive, then we turn down the motion.
I don't want to play the whole thing though.
Yeah, it's all like.
Yeah.
So Dan wants back in.
He wants back.
Yes.
He made a mistake.
So I'm going to bring it back up at this point and ask that you discuss that issue.
Open for discussion?
Open for discussion.
They said, Dan Daigle said this.
Once again,
Dan Daigle said that.
it has
So
nothing to do with what I think, has to do with what the policy manuals say. On page 13 of the Maine Municipal Association manual, under resignations, there's a good deal of misunderstanding about when a resignation is effective.
Wait a minute.
A resignation of a municipal officer.
I love it, Dan. Gets
What is a
procedural.
resignation? Not a resignation.
Well, I would say when you sing it or remain, I mean, I can say that could qualify. And so, and real quick,
it's gonna get to it, but
No, that's fine. So I think we got the gist of it. He takes back his resignation, Danny and Mike, and then goes against his own law that he made up. And it's just, it's crazy, Mike. Like you see, and I think Kirk says it. He's like, I think we're just going to turn this into a public access for like small towns. And I just want to watch public access like in politics and stuff like that. Cause it's absolutely insane. Like a resignation isn't really a resignation unless I don't even know what to say, Danny. Go ahead. Shit was crazy.
I mean, no take backsies. This guy triple stamps a double stamp. I mean, he does everything you can't do. Like Mike said, it's like he's up there in the middle of Madawaska, Maine. He thinks he might as well be on the U.S. Senate floor. I mean, this guy thinks everything's so important. His shit don't stink. Yet, he flies off the handle the week before, just resigns in a fit of rage and then, tries to just show up, like he's in the office and he never quit in the first place.
Like George Costanza.
Or George Costanza.
Costanza.
Yeah.
Yes.
He pulls a Costanza, right? It's like, guys, I'm good, right? He's like, you guys shouldn't have accepted my resignation. Almost like I was testing you guys and you failed. You shouldn't have.
He basically says it was illegal for him to resign. It's basically kind of the way I took it.
yeah, because no one notarized his resignation. Essentially, is what he's saying.
But Carano was saying he didn't even submit it to the clerk. So so he messed the whole thing up. I mean, just ridiculousness. And if this is an example of just stupidity of government and over governing to accomplish absolutely nothing, two steps back, one step forward, whatever. You know what the fuck I mean?
Well said.
This guy's just COVID brain. The guy's ridiculous. But these guys make a great bit out of it. It goes on for a while.
Yeah. And if we want to get into what brought them up to Madawaska, because maybe this was from a while ago, so can we? It's a quick clip, much quicker than Daigle.
You don't know the backstory. Very quickly, of course, there was a blizzard last year. We drove up. If we even go back, you have to go back to when the sport of tennis was originated.
Yeah,
and do the whole thing, or no? So Steve lied. I mean, one of the great, honestly, like
we can all say it.
Yeah,
now.
just like an inarguable Steve lied. He played high school tennis. Like there's no way.
I mean, I think I said this on a previous Quantum Kirk, right? Danny, I think we talked about this. I don't know how it came up, but like a blatant lie. Anyone who watched that video, it's a famous KMS video. Kirk beat Steve 6-0, 6-0 in tennis. And Steve is like a big guy. Like we saw him dunk a basketball. So he's definitely like somewhat athletic. Okay. But the way he swung that racket, it did look like he had never seen one before in his life. There's no way he played on a high school tennis team. Thoughts, boys, on that?
What was the payoff to the lie?
To say he was like Dexter played Madawaska, I don't even remember that. That we might need Tim and Canton, the historian, to give us like the actual full backstory on that. But what's the payoff to any lie?
Oh, you know what I think it was? I think they're looking at. I could be so wrong, but doing like some events, and he's looking at like the worst places to do them in like really far border towns. And then I think he might have said Madawaska, Maine, and then I think he was like, "Oh, I played tennis there." I
played tennis there. Yes, I'm Mike. I think you're kind of on spot there, right, with that.
I think that's right. And what the payoff to this lie is, if Steve doesn't lie, they don't go to Madawaska. Mike doesn't get too drunk, have mental problems. You don't end up with this whole catering arc that we talked about, where now Kirk's out $30,000 and then the whole thing with Justin, and then maybe Cullinane doesn't go crazy, and maybe we're not doing this producer search now. I mean, this could be one of the biggest dominoes in KMS history, as a matter of fact.
Wow, Danny, COVID brain is working fucking overtime right now.
Butterfly effect. Well done, Danny. That was impressive.
Well, very impressive, Danny.
I just blacked out. What happened?
Yeah, dude, that video, if you're a new KMS fan, I think it's probably still up on YouTube somewhere in the network. I think Menor should probably release that as like some sort of like throwback video, the tennis match. It was absolutely like, I couldn't believe it. Like Kirk, I think could have won that game left-handed. I swear to God, he could have won.
And yet, Cullinane was there, which they mentioned. They have the announcer who was on Crack and Smack and everything else.
Correct.
Yeah.
Was that the Doncaster or was that?
Yeah.
That was a sneaky one of the better parts of that, boys. Well, yeah, Dave, where do you go next?
No, so what I was saying is like the whole Justin interaction with, like, at this point, do you think that was Justin ever mentioned as a candidate to replace Steve? Because Justin was there now at this point as the intern. He's in studio now with Carano. He's doing like the double producer sort of thing. Like, that's something I was thinking of, because Justin was the favorite when this happened with Cullinane, right? Justin was the favorite for everyone to get this one. Was he even mentioned as an actual candidate to replace?
No,
Steve?
my memory that anytime to the producer race is when they pretty much created a job for him, which he asked for, a full-time. Wasn't a full-time producer, but it was like a full-time, like second producer or whatnot, and like an actual salary with benefits, and he turned it down. Now, I don't know if that was the first time they offered him employment or kind of hinted towards it, because we could be missing out because he was there a bunch. Danny, do you remember anything?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this might have been at least somewhat of the first job on, you know. God, sorry. It's disgusting. This could have been. I don't remember. They offered him the job that when he asked for a job, Kirk offered him, and then he left. That was, I remember, last August. So this was a year before that. So I don't recall exactly what was maybe offered to him, or if Kirk saw him as a potential candidate at that point. We'd have to dive into the archives on that one.
Yeah, I'm just interested because this time around he was like the favorite. Like, even in Kirk and everyone, Dave, and like, he was the favorite to get this job this time around. And I just don't remember him even being discussed the last time around. And he was in studio. It was a big part of the show. At this time, he was doing. I think this is around the time he might have read the Julie DeCaro book. This is like a big time in the Justin time on the show. Was around this time, because it was, like I said, Madawaska too. It was up until Saco. Then he went away after Saco, like the week of Saco, if I'm not mistaken. Like, we went up there and he basically didn't show up didn't have any skits ready, didn't have any videos ready, and disappeared from the show for a while.
Yep.
Going into Saco too. So yeah. The other thing on here that caught my eye in this episode, I don't know if you guys noticed it either, is they discussed the blind Mike's salary. Now, Mike, I think, had just come back from his, fencing. So this is post fencing Mike. There's still some scarring left over. You could tell Kirk is like taking some small jabs at him, but he's not going full in, I think, the way he would have before. And they do bring up money. And I'm always intrigued by Inside Radio, by money, by how Mike makes a living. This is something that just always intrigues me. I'll never get over it. I need Mike to sit me down and like explain his finances to me. Like, I just want to know. Someone calls in and asks how much, if Mike is making the same amount through Patreon, because he just started the Blind Mike Project, as he was working full-time on Barstool. And he says that it's around the same. He says if it's less, it's a little less. And then someone says, well, why not do both? And Kirk wasn't opposed to it. So that kind of shocked me when I heard that, because I was like, oh, shit, if Kirk would have been down, why wouldn't Mike have been able to do both? Did that catch your guys' eyes at all? Catch your ears? Excuse me.
Well, it just made me think of recently with Dave's obsession with the OnlyFans and the Frank the Tank with the cameo, because it's kind of it's similar. It's kind of the first chance of that. So yeah, it's interesting how that, but he hasn't had too big of an issue. It's just the one Dave's obsessed with it, won't shut up about it. So Kirk's kind of been consistent, I guess. If you look back at that.
Yeah, that popped in my mind as well, because that comes up quite often. I mean, it's probably every month or so somebody calls in and says, Mike, you're doing great. You seem to be better. Why don't you come back full time? Why don't you work for Barstool again? And now with the whole Penn thing, it seems like him and Dave are, have mended fences. Maybe that could happen. But I think, though, if he wasn't lying and he actually was making about as much with Patreon at that point, with the number of subscribers they had then he's doing better now, because they've only increased subscribers since then. I mean, Blind Mike Project has taken off. Why Are You Laughing is increasing its, international visibility. So, clearly he's doing really well. So Mike seems to be in a really good place right now. And I think, I've heard him talk about on Blind Mike Project. I mean, yeah, he keeps doing Kirk's show for free, but again, that promotion is worth its weight in gold. So if he can be in that position where Kirk's not expecting him to do a bunch of extra stuff and be on a salary, because that's the thing, because you just know it would become an issue. Just like as soon as, and I know Mike's not a producer, but with Cullinane, where he had to stop doing the hits, and then Kirk's made a big deal about these, whoever the next producer is has to, live, breathe, eat, sleep, and shit KMS. If Mike is off doing a Patreon or a Cameo or whatever, or OnlyFans, God forbid, and he's not doing something for the show, he's going to get destroyed. So, the fact is, this way he can operate his Patreon and focus on that, make a lot of money for him and Craig and Alba, and then, still be able to go on the show, promote, have a good time. And, it's great conversation. So
that's
it is interesting, though, that this guy brought it up back then.
So that's the devil's advocate. That's a good point, Danny, because in my mind, I'm thinking right away, I go, oh shit, why wouldn't he have double dipped then? Like, why not? If Kirk was like open to, because Kirk, I think, says, and I quote, like, yeah, Mike can do whatever he wants. If he wants to come back here full time and keep the Patreon, I'd have no problem, or part time, or whatever the case may be. We could talk about it. But then they get into Mike goes, oh, like everyone's being nice now, but they'll be mean eventually again. And you could tell like he's still got the PTSD from, whatever.
It's still lingering.
Yeah. It's still lingering, but you're right, Danny. Actually, you just brought up a good point. If Kirk was paying him, then Kirk would expect more than just go in there twice a week and just sit down and do a show. He would expect him to help with socials or be on top of things. And if he was not, and then he was more focused on, say, fighting with Stuttering John every day, yes, then that probably would get some backlash. So that's actually a good point by you, Danny. I really didn't fully think out that thought.
And that's like 2 in the last 10 minutes. I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, this is the smartest you've ever been.
Maybe they get sick
COVID more often. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
maybe KMS would have had a little bit of a street team. Blind Mike had a couple very funny, like
yeah. Speaking of Blind Mike, go ahead. Yep.
Some good. They're actually glad Danny's here for now, because they're kind of dad jokes, but both of these, he has 2 of them. Both of them made me laugh equally. So let's get
Danny.
into
How about this, Danny? Rate these. I want Danny to rate these. All right.
Yeah, you are a professional. So
who is in the building? Is just 3 of us? No one else is. Justin.
Justin's with us too.
Oh, okay. Hello, Justin.
He's got a mic, but it's quiet. Here we go.
He's just not
Hello.
talking.
Oh, look at that. We have 4 mics.
Wow.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, really only 1 mic, I say.
Nice.
Danny?
I'd say that's a 10 out of 10. I mean, that's just
on the Danny Richter scale of like corny jokes.
The fact that it goes unacknowledged adds about 5 points too.
Can someone Photoshop like 4 Danny's holding up 10s like a dunk contest?
Yeah.
All right, so
John, that's a job for John. John, you got to do that if you see
so that's a 10. That's a 10 out of 10. I'm curious to see where we are with this one's a little long.
Mike,
longer,
before you hold on, Mike, before you play, can you pause it? See, Danny, that's where you go. You don't watch Portnoy's videos, Danny. Like, you got to leave room. Like, that's not a professional score.
True. Especially on the first one. I know,
on the first one, you can't give a 10 out of 10, Danny, because then if this one's better, where do you go? Danny, come on.
That might have been a 10. So
it still might have been though, David. Yeah, I got you. Let's go.
You're on your knees.
I am praying for this wisdom tooth surgery that Dr. Arthur P. Daniels comes out of retirement once and performs the surgery. That's all I'm asking. That's it.
Sounds like the wisdom was already taken out of her,
So anyway, tongues are stupid.
You're just jealous. I'm going to take that to your new dentist. Go ahead.
Okay. Get the root of that joke. So
you're on your knees.
Man, that was better. See, that one was better in my eyes.
Well, it's better and it's not. So this one's multifactorial here. It's multi-layered.
Okay.
You've got Carano making blowjob jokes, kind of propping this whole thing up.
Okay.
Mike has 2 in there, and then Kirk comes over the top with the roots part of it.
Yep.
So there's a lot going on here. I'd say the wisdom joke in and of itself, standalone, is a 6.4. But then when you kind of factor in everything else that's happening, I think the whole situation goes up to an 8.6.
Yeah, and I think Kirk just not just being disgusted by it also
but secretly loving it because he doesn't come
yeah.
back over the top if he doesn't love that.
Yeah.
And Carano, I noticed,
was
there a little producing going on there with Carano saying he's on his knees twice? I don't know.
Yeah. Agreed. So
that was it. That was the clip restarting. That was a me error.
I like it.
Yeah, that was good. So another caller that called into this episode that I found really, really great, and I wish I had told you to clip it, Mike. I didn't, so it is what it is. But I'm just going to describe it. Is and a guy that we've been talking about a couple times.
Do you know where it was? Did you?
I didn't write down the timestamp, so that's on me. But the Sopranos guy called. Did that stand out to you and how good that was?
I completely forgot about it. I forgot about Sopranos guy.
Hey, me too, Mike, a little bit. So like
he was casino guy in this one.
He was casino guy in this one, and he had Kirk and Mike absolutely rolling because it kind of tied into the whole Daigle aspect of it, where Daigle was in the meeting and he's like, I rescind my resignation and all that. And then anyone who's ever watched the movie Casino, it's like, Robert De Niro's famous scene when he's yelling at the board at the gaming commission. And Sopranos guy did that whole fucking scene. He did it word for word. It was phenomenal.
Do we want to pull it up?
Yeah, you can splice it in afterwards. You can. Yeah. Oh.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, you promised me a hearing. You didn't even look at the FBI report. When you were my guest, Mr. Chairman, Senator, at the Tangiers Hotel, did you not promise me that I would have a fair hearing? You were never my guest. I never comped you. I don't comp you at least 2 or 3 times a month at the Tangiers. Was I at that dinner? Just tell me. Was I at the dinner? Was I at that dinner? Was I at that dinner?
I had dinner. We had dinner.
I was in the building, so you know damn well I was at that dinner, and you swore to me that I would have a fair hearing at that dinner. Did you not? Did you not? Tell me I was at least at the dinner. Allow me that much. Give me that much at least.
He's grasping at straws.
Thank you, Ace. I appreciate it.
Remarkable.
Yeah, phenomenal call. It's so great how I would love for him to start calling back. I mean, there's so much material out there with Soprano. He was quick, man. Danny, I think me and you talked about this on the episode how quick he was, how people thought that he actually pre-recorded it. And then, met him and I asked him, he's like, nah, dude, I'm going off the top. So, he obviously memorized the lines, but to able to jump with Kirk and play with Kirk, he was an amazing fucking caller. Amazing caller.
I miss him dearly. Yeah, he was just so good. And for people who are fans of, Sopranos or any of the movies that he quoted, I mean, just the way it hits is wonderful. And I was picturing that scene in Casino. And now every time I think of Dan Daigle, I'm thinking of that stupid idiot with the cowboy hat coming in, trying to audit him. I mean, complaining about his nephew or whatever, working on the slot floor. I mean, just, yeah, unbelievable memory.
So there's that going on. So that was a great call. And then one more that I do want to play too was the whole, I forgot Michael Bloomberg ran for president, and that was a big deal on this episode too. And that made me laugh. And the whole clip of Brian Williams before he was canceled. So this is I think pre-canceled Brian Williams because he's still on NBC News, or is it post-canceled? I actually can't remember.
So all the stuff with the Katusha rockets and bodies floating down Bourbon Street, that was several years ago. He got fired off of NBC Nightly News and sort of canceled, and then they started bringing him back. I think he still does some kind of a weekend thing, so he still pops up now and again. Okay. So this is post liar liar pants on fire Brian Williams. He's still back.
And then they play this, Mike. I think you pulled this clip. You played this one, right?
Yep, it's great clip.
This
I'm sorry.
guy, he could do it.
So this is, remember Bloomberg was running for president?
Yes.
Which is like, it's weird it ever happened. He spent $1 billion.
What a waste! The most colossal waste of fucking money.
So it's $1 billion. So Brian Williams, this idiot, and this other woman, an idiot, are doing their math on this one. Go ahead, Matt.
But you see it as a possibility if he wants to spend $1 billion beating this guy, he could do it.
Absolutely. Somebody tweeted recently that actually with the money he spent, he could have given every American $1 million.
Got it. Let's put it up.
They have a graphic.
That's like if me and Justin were talking about this, right? And I like Justin just threw it out there, and I'm like, it sounds right, actually.
Each American $1 million.
This guy,
remarkable.
So
yeah, shocking.
So how does that get by the producers, guys? Because that, like, they have a graphic up, like Kirk says, right? So the producers, like, a bunch of people have to like approve that. How does no one do the math? That's the craziest shit I've ever. Like, that's honestly fucking insane that a news organization would like go through all this, because there's red tape. It's not like me, you, and Danny get together and like we just fuck around and like we talk about aliens and we're just
we just spoke about the upcoming presidential election in 3 months.
Yeah, in 3 months. Exactly.
Yeah, where was the fact checking there?
But we snagged it, so we were doing
but
better than
here's
that.
the thing, Mike. Even you, if you had taken the time to make a graphic about it, you might have realized that there was something off.
Yeah, 2023 election. No, that was remarkable.
How does that happen? How does it happen? How does it actually happen?
Yeah, because that was the big thing back then too. They're like, instead of spending all your own money on this campaign, you could like solve world hunger and stuff like that. So that was kind of her train of thought, like try to expose how dumb it all was. Yeah, remarkable.
Like, yeah, that's not how this works, people. You know. But let's get into the main part of this episode. What made Kirk mad as we end this episode, as we're getting to the end, is Rick. It's Big Rick. That's who pissed Kirk off the most. That's who the third strike was, Danny, that you talked about. That's who made him. And they haven't been up to Madawaska. And I don't think Kirk will ever go back. And there was at one point where Kirk said Madawaska would be like a yearly trip. And he hasn't even thought about Madawaska. You haven't heard the town name Madawaska on the show in a while. It's not something he even contemplates doing anymore. And, you know, Danny, why don't you break it down for us as far as like what the whole beef was, what made him mad, because he was screaming. I mean, he told Stacy to fuck off. He told everyone from Madawaska to basically go fuck themselves this episode.
So here, basically he made a very small joke, as Kirk called it, a 0.1 out of 10 on the Kirk scale, as far as sort of crapping on Big Rick. And it was just kind of them messing around. And apparently Big Rick hadn't even heard the show. And Justin calls up to connect with him, make sure everything's good. Hey, we're getting 75 pizzas from you or whatever. Like, he's going to take care of catering in the show. He was involved with the alcohol. Like, this guy, Big Rick, was going to make some money. I mean, you don't see big events in Madawaska that often, I think, unless they're, filling Pickle Park with, whatever kind of events they do up there, Pickle Fest. So this was a big thing for him. And so he doesn't even let Justin barely get a word out. Justin calls up and says, hey, hope everything's okay. By the way, just so you know, it's just, anything you might have heard, this is just a show. Rick cuts him off, basically says, I never want to do business with you guys. You're not, I want nothing to do with you. And this is after all the hullabaloo in Madawaska the year before, where he's got the big map and he's welcoming in and he's on Mike and the Minifans and they do the big show there, and they gave him a lot of business the year before too. Although I guess some Minifans didn't pay their bills and he had to try to track people down. So, he might not
probably think of a few, right, Mike?
Yeah. I mean,
definitely.
It's a pretty easy targets there. So, but still, the guy must have made a shit ton of money. I mean, that must have made his whole winter in Madawaska.
Well, and I think Kirk mentions that he called Kirk and Kirk paid those people's bills.
Kirk,
if I'm not mistaken.
he ended up picking up the tab.
I mean, what a humanitarian, what a gracious move by Kirk. Once again, just one of the best taking care of people, and Big Rick just spits in his face. And it's pretty sad, but yeah, just very, very strange. And the fact that Justin was even in charge of reaching out once again, and this wasn't his fault per se, but maybe if Kirk had been on the phone with him, it might have been a different story.
There was one thing that made me laugh, and it kind of showed where Justin was at with being thorough with everything. They're talking about drinking at a public place, and they're like, and Carano's like, yeah, I don't think we could do that. Because, permits and whatnot, it's not Mardi Gras. And Justin's like, no, we're good. And Kirk's like, you sure? He's like, yep. And he was like being serious. They're kind of like, yeah, not too sure about that. So that's kind of, gives you a little insight to.
But then Carano's like, "Oh, you can't drink in
happen.
public anywhere." It's like, well, have you ever heard of New Orleans? I mean, there are some places.
Yeah, no.
where you
So
can
it
do
was. You're right, Danny and Mike. It was like two extremes where Justin's like, "Yeah, we'll be fine," and Carano's like, "No, you can never do that anywhere in the world." You know, it's like there was a middle ground. It's just funny to have both of those. Yeah, the contrast there, and then like Justin being the kind of like. I guess we could say it. Justin was the first crossing the T's and dotting the I's guys in this show, right? Like he was in charge of this from Madawaska. He was in charge of the catering in Saco. Like he was the first crossing the T, dotting the I, and yeah, that didn't go too well, I guess, huh?
Although he was truly crossing his I's and dotting T's, definitely.
Good joke, Danny. I like that.
2.2.
6.7 on that one, Danny. 6.7.
I peaked about 20.
Mike didn't sell that
20
for you.
minutes
That's
ago.
our fault.
Yeah, it's been downhill in the last 20. I think the fever's coming on.
All right, guys. I mean, that's really all I have as far as like that goes. The Big Rick was the big part of this episode. It was a fun re-listen. I did notice a couple of things before we go. A couple small things. Quick hour and a half. This was like compared to what the Steve normally episodes go that we've been re-listening to, Danny. This is like more of a modern day hour and a half, but still no YouTube and only about 5 or 6 calls. He didn't even do that many calls and no rundown. Once again, we're still at the point where there's not like a what's next. You don't hear what's next at all on this episode. It's more like free-flowing conversation between the three. So that still caught me. Say that again, Mike.
Carano didn't speak, not to cut you off, which I just absolutely did. Carano, I was blown away. Carano spoke 10 times more on Jerry's show than he did on Kirk's show. Which I was blown away because I remember Carano being a little chatterbox, with Jerry. So I was like, yeah, I was curious when I saw the timeline. It's like, how's it 90 minutes with these guys all in there? So it was a little surprising, to be honest.
Well, it's true, Mike. I think to Dave's point, because there was never, and not that he couldn't have interjected if he had a topic, but Kirk knew how that he wanted that show to flow, and he drove it all the way. And not that he doesn't drive it now, but he wants to get some, back and forth from the producers. I mean, look at the show the other day between Cullinane and Coleman. I mean, he was just going back and forth between them. Guys, what you got next? What you got next? I mean, complete opposite to Dave's point. So I think, Carano might have butted in a little bit more here and there. He did talk a lot during the movie part, and I thought this was kind of interesting. Well, they started talking about, Harrison Ford and his career, because one of the callers brought up that Raiders of the Lost Ark had been reviewed on the Rewatchables, and they got into Clint Eastwood's career and then some movie music talk, and Carano definitely got into that, which makes sense because that's right in his wheelhouse, that and some music talk as well. So, I mean, Mike, if
you remember the other thing he touched on, Dave? Did your ears perk up? COVID vaccine.
Yep.
With his distrust for Big Pharma, and he kind of got mocked at. He got laughed at a wee bit. And then they were like, yeah, Justin, how were you after the COVID shot? I was like, yeah, pretty sick, actually. So yeah. Carano, and looking back, not as crazy as people probably thought listening live.
Well, no, he's still fucking crazy, Mike. Okay, he's a crazy person.
With this one, he was right.
Yeah. Did you guys? There's one more thing I wanted to bring up small, and then I'll let you finish it up, Danny. But I just did want to bring it up, especially with like what happened with Pizza Joe. There was a point in time where Carano wasn't listening to what Kirk and Mike were talking about, and Kirk called him out on it and did not get mad. Carano kind of gave a terse answer. He literally goes, "No, I wasn't listening. I was trying to get these phone calls ready," and gave him like an attitude about it.
I thought the exact same thing. Yeah, and I was like, and you're right. I was shocked that there wasn't a little more pushback like we saw. I mean, saying you're looking for calls is real. That guy Joe just sitting there, I don't know what was going on.
Hunter Biden locked.
Yeah. So, Mike, is it like? So, let me ask you, Mike. That caught me. Now that we got you here, I'll ask you. Is it a thing to where like you're especially if you're doing it for the first time, you're kind of concentrating on getting like the calls up and getting the buttons ready, and you're zoned out on that, and you kind of miss that, or should he have been paying attention at the same time on that? What do you think?
I've done it, 3 or 4 times now. I could get why he would have been focused on that, because in his mind, hey, if I just focus for 30 seconds on this and get it right, it'll save me a world of hurt if, it goes poorly. So, but he definitely heard his name and kind of came to. So I think Kirk saw that, and maybe that's why he didn't murder him. But I was kind of expecting the same thing you were. I think maybe a little slapping on the dick a little bit, but he didn't. He kind of let him go and kind of moved on. So
yeah.
And this
All
is
right, Danny,
back
you
when...
have anything else that you want to finish up with?
Well, just to finish up on that point, I do think this is back when the calls were still fairly new, as you mentioned, Dave. And remember, they had a lot of issues. Even Steve had a lot of issues getting the calls working at times early on. So maybe Kirk had a little bit of sympathy there. Although Carano kind of did it again with that other drop, which granted it wasn't a drop that he was told to have prepped, but Justin was supposed to get him one. You remember that? And he's like, "Is this it?" And
He did do it twice. And
then Carano mentioned some name that was not relevant to anything, and Kirk's like, "No, that's not what I'm fucking talking about." So it did happen a couple times. I can imagine that's difficult. I mean, I've spaced out on this show looking at my phone. I mean, it can happen to anybody, and especially when you have the attention spans of ants, which most of us do. Mike, I think you can do it, but it's going to be that part's going to be a challenge just because that show moves so fast. I mean, even listening to the show, if I'm doing something else, I find I miss, really big tidbits in a short period of time if my attention wanders elsewhere. So definitely a challenge there. But Mike, you can do it. You and Andrew can do it great. So
you almost had a good endorsement, but you fucked it up at the end. But thank you guys. Thank you guys for letting me have this. I think we should be right around 45 minutes when it's all said and done. So I think what you guys wanted to do, right?
It was a good re-listen, Mike. Thanks for coming on. I'm rooting for you for producer. I've had your back the whole time. I can't talk for my partner. We're not going to get into it again. No. But Danny, I'll represent Quantum Kirk as best I can tomorrow, and I'm gonna probably bury you a little, but let's have a little fun with it.
We should have fun with it, I guess. If we could, real quick here at the end, I think. When it comes to the Julie part, my main thing, just because I'm not gonna be able to defend myself tomorrow, I just want a little bit more transparency, which sounded like Cullinane agreed with me. You guys seem to think that she already had the job. I didn't quite, at least that's what was coming across to me, which obviously wasn't the case. And Kirk said that as well. So honestly, I was surprised that that's what he honed in on out of all the things in that ridiculous episode last week. So you know what? Have fun with it. Roll me back over again. I'll be watching from my deathbed. And I'm sure I'll, if I have a chance to respond on Twitter later, I will. But you guys have a great time. Couldn't be more disappointed. I'm not going to be there. I've ruined everything for everyone as usual.
Yep.
But you guys, you two are the best, and I will be rooting for both of you, and I love you both very much.
All right, Danny. Hey, feel better, and and for folks, we're gonna have a few more. Hopefully, I think a couple of the producer hopefuls have agreed to come on. We're gonna try to get it scheduled up. So hopefully, each one of these guys will have a shot before it's revealed in Sacco who actually wins the producer job. And these are easy episodes to do. We're not gonna press you. We're not going to do a Menners and make you look bad or whatever. We just want to review an old Kirk episode, your favorite one, and just shoot the shit and have a good time. So this isn't like a Menners where we're going to try to bury you.
With the bellies on this show, it's a soft landing
journalism over here.
Soft landing spot.
Soft landing spot. Yeah.
Soft landing
All right, guys,
spot.
have a good one.